Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz here on a Wednesday night as I try to every week get in here and talk Supercoach with you guys. It was awesome catching up with my good pal Benny, and thanks for Chris jumping on the chat as well on Monday. As always, guys, check us out on all our social media platforms, particularly this time of the year, YouTube. We tried Spotify. Get in touch with us via X, as a lot of you guys have done today. I would have had probably 12 or 13 messages so far on X, which is pretty cool. So I do try to get to you guys midweek, much easier for me than on a Saturday in particular, where a few questions usually fly through. I do have cricket starting back this Saturday, so don't be surprised if I do not respond there. But midweek is always a great time to sort of run the ideas that you have, or get on the live chats on Wednesday. We'll see about Friday night this week. I do have a 2 a.m. start Saturday morning, so that may not happen. So we might make this the thorough show that we can. For me, moved up last week again after the disastrous week of the week before. So that was a good round, 25.89. Reed over trainer would have been much better because obviously we got 26.11, but still pretty happy with that, and making my way up. So apart from that one real horrendous week, well, actually two now, the first week and last week, things have been tracking fairly decent. So have a couple of little mistakes there, but that obviously always happens. You're not going to get everything perfect throughout the season. So that leaves me with this team at the moment. Now, there's a couple of worlds I was looking at. One of them, because of some of the news today, does change. So I'll discuss a little bit that in a second. But that defense, fairly happy with that, except for the idea that Sinclair could be playing a little bit more forward or mid-forward, which in that sort of Sheasel role, which would be very frustrating if he does. It's I'm just really hoping that it's at least more midfield time than trudging up forward. But yeah, Sinclair, Sheasel, who's meant to be training back with the half-backs this week, which will be great if he is, because obviously he's a much different player when he's playing half-back than he is at midfield. Zorks usually gets up for the Gold Coast game. Roberts is doing a job for us. Bice, isn't he? The premium just keeps going. Every year we seem to be blessed with sort of Dacos, Sheasel, McKercher, and this year we've got Bice going well, and then Trainer, who this week might not be the best for a cash gen, is like he could still score well against the Hawks if the ball spends a bit of time down there. But it's next week when that 2 cycles out that we will see the cash reset. And then Carroll has been kind of blessed a little bit with the injury news down at Carlton this week. Zach Williams is obviously a forward, but more Silvani, who's broken his hand 1, 2, potentially 3 weeks there, which shores up his job security too. So hopefully we can get another sort of, it'd be perfect world, 100K out of him would be great. Liam O'Connell could be potentially back soon. He played pretty well in the VFL last week, so he can stay as my loophole. But hopefully gets back and makes some cash at some point. Midfield's there. Brayshaw of the VC at the moment have toyed with that idea about Cherry coming in, but now that Chera has been cleared, it does change that for me. Dacos, Sarong, Neil as the primos, Chera, and Clary's probably got one more week in my side. Ashcroft and Lindsay. Ashcroft is still there at the moment as one of these trade ideas that I'll talk about in a second. Lindsay, obviously still making cash. We've got Hall, Gross, who we are really sweating on the fact that after their performances in the VFL last week, that they do come back in and then have an impact. And then, Gawn listed as my captain at the moment, obviously playing the Eagles, DeConning, and then Boyd, who actually played quite well in the VFL last week, so hopefully gets a reprieve at some point. But Marley has been named, who's a ruck forward for North Melbourne. So even so, maybe there's a person that we can swap into at some point. And then the forwards ranking Smith, McRae, Caleb, Marriage, and Pal Pepper, who continues to fly. So I'm pretty happy with actually that set. Horn Francis would probably be nice to have in there again, and maybe Track or Warner, who I'm all eyeing off. But with Pal Pepper, he's pretty well matching Horn Francis at the moment, so I'm not losing anything from there. And Cleary and Stone have reset their cash, which is fantastic. And Stone in particular, Cleary is still going up, and then Flinney. So where it sits from probably a cash gen, it's not a bad situation. So hopefully these guys can continue to make some cash and can try to get some of these rookies off the mat. The main rookies are sort of Ashcroft, Lindsay, Trainer. Bice is fine for now. Like if Bice can sort of get up to mid 450 would be a perfect world. He yeah, when he becomes an option to swap, if that becomes the case, and can kind of side swap him just to a premium anyway, so he kind of becomes a premium as it is. And same with these guys, like Flynn's going to get himself to premium price. So's Marriage, so's Pepper. So you kind of look at them not as rookies because they're at that price. So it's really just this issue here with Ashcroft and Lindsay and Trainer. So that's I'm fairly happy where things are sitting at the moment. There's some people in a obviously better situation than me. There's others who are obviously a lot worse, but we will talk through that. So the trade options I'm kind of left with, it depends on what happens with West Coast here. So there's nothing confirmed yet. As I said, I was looking at that potential Chera goes out and bring Cherry in, because I do, and I'm still toying with that idea, but that does obviously mean Flynn goes to R3. And I was more on that idea because everyone was going to trade out Chera anyway. But now the fact that he's, holding break even, I still may contend, get tempted, but he's still doing a job each week. Like if you look at his scores throughout the season, apart from last week when he came off with that little bit of a groin issue, but seems to be fine. If it was more of an issue, they would have not challenged. But 106, 113, 98, 99, 117, 110, and then just that 81. It gets at Geelong side anyway. He's been pretty good for us, averaging 103, but up till last week was averaging 107. Like you're not going to, that's actually pretty similar to like somebody even like a Caleb Sarong, if we obviously ignore last week's score for him. Like Caleb for the year's averaging 108, and Neil's averaging 102, and Cher up to last week was averaging, like better than them. So it's not to be disappointed there. So it comes down to maybe Clay Hall goes out for Huswaite for me, and then Ashcroft goes up is something that I am considering. But it all depends on which Eagle's named. And just because of, they're kind of the value guys at the moment. And then if there's a few guys who are going to be dropping in value soon. So that's everything that's going on with my team, just so you guys are in the loop. So at the moment, nothing. And all just depends if these West Coast places are named. If they're named on the emergency too, I'm probably more likely to hold as well, because I kind of want to, the fact that we get the Saturday night as well. There is a guy from Essendon that might get a little tempting, and I'll talk about him as we go through the pod, because I'm sure he is coming. All right. Welcome, guys. Kev, as always, thanks for jumping on. Do appreciate. I'm bringing in Cherry now. I'm bringing in Cherry now. Finbar's name, will that affect him? Thanks. Well, I think that's a potential. Like, he's named in that last position. Now, you don't think they're going to have a tall like him as sub. Actually, it depends on what site you look at, because Footy Info have him as the first. So they've been using Dersman as the emergency. It's a chance Phillips gets in there. I wouldn't think Marley would. So they have been using Darling as the cutout. You would think Marley probably comes in because he's that ruck forward, might be the cutout guy now, and jump up as that second ruck. But you wouldn't think a lot would change from Cherry. It just means Darling would spend more time in the forward line. So I'd be very shocked if it meant reduced minutes for Cherry. They do have up against Goldstein, but I wouldn't think that would be a problem this week. So we just kind of see what Marley's role is, but I wouldn't do that at all. I'd be happily bring in Cherry, and I'm still tempted by it. I might, it's interesting. Sometimes you wake up and go, nope, I want to actually go with this idea or not. But at the moment, just because Cherry is named, it's harder to trade him out now. But it is an interesting one, because Mac has said that, is Chera worth the hold, or do we sideways to a Dunkley or even a more value pick in Warner? Warner's break even 79, so potentially he's not going to go up too much. They've got the big match up against the Giants, so I am tempted to do it. But if I was trading Ashcroft, but at the same time, there's a part of me that kind of just wants to hold, because then I get another look at Huswaite. Ashcroft's likely to potentially go up slightly. Like, his break even's 48, so if he has a good game and they're projecting 74, he could make another 10, 11K. Williams, he has a big game, it's probably less likely, but he has had some decent scores this year. If we have obviously a look at Levi, and then there'd be nothing worse than sort of trading someone out and they come out, and we've seen this with rookies and score a decent score. Like, he's got that 84, 87, 90, and 89 in there. So there's no reason why he couldn't probably score 90, and then his cash gen still goes up. So that is why I'm nearly considering holding, because I don't need to go early there on upgrading him. And he might probably go up the same amount that probably Warner does anyway. So don't need to kind of jump at that. If you've got other rookies, like if you've got maybe Murphy Reed, that becomes maybe a different situation still, where you could easily get up to him. But side swapping from Chera, yeah, okay, Chera's break even's pretty well at what he like slightly higher than what he's probably going to score. So that is something. But at the same time, do we really need to sideways for him right now? The fact that he's playing, I do think it does change everything. So you can easily hold him. So yeah, I think the only move you probably Chera, you're not wanting to side swap. And this is what we talked about the other day. If you're going, it's got to be up to you because you've got the leftover cash and you're happy to get up to Bont, Butters, Dacos, Cherry. I think they're the only four options if you're looking to move Chera. Outside of that, you just hold him because the other options, it feels too sideways. The other player that has been really good in defense that doesn't get talked about a lot is Jasper Fletcher. I've had him in I think I've got him in one draft and had him in a couple of daily fantasies the last few weeks and that because he is traveling quite well. So a few of those lines have been traveling well in defense because you've got him at the moment who's put up 85 last week. He's put up some good consistent 90s. It's not like from a super coach point of view that he's grown a lot in cash. It's only like the 65K. The issue is Kitty Coleman is back. Now, is that back for a VFL point of view or is that back from an AFL point of view? We're yet to see. Most likely you'd think it's from a VFL point of view. But he's got to be close. So now we start talking about, does this affect Zorko and how much does this affect you guys like your Jasper Fletchers? They've got Darcy Wilmot down there who's flying as well. Like the last week 105 and the week before 85 and the start of the year 100 and 101. So they really do like obviously what he does off halfback. So how that sort of affects when Kitty Coleman comes in will be interesting from a Fletcher point of view. So, but no, like playing very well, Travis, and he's another very good footballer that the Lions have picked up from the father-son point of view. And Crimson has said, yes, Chera is playing, did get clear, which is amazing because, the fact that North could not get off their player and you nearly were thinking, well, there's no hope because this is the way the AFL is rolling. And then was it Laura Kane that came out and said, we might have to have a look in that tackle rule. It's just, of course, always after the fact. Michael Hayes think Draper might be a good get next week. Yes, with the Crouch injury and with Boxall debuting, hopefully there'll be a chance for a nice downgrade. So Boxall's form in the VFL has been really good. So very impressed. Did talk about him the other night that he should be getting a debut soon. St Kilda. No, have they actually officially announced it? Because they did put up a tweet with just a picture of a box. So that was pretty clear that Boxall was going to debut. But yeah, from a point of view from Draper is the one you're looking at because obviously he's been used as sub quite a lot now with Crouch's injury. That does open up more opportunity. We get a free look at him, which is the best part about it because his break even is so high. So you've got Sid Draper with a break even of 87. So you would not be even considering touching him this week. And you don't think he's going to get there. But the help was for us, those two sub-affected scores. So start of the year, really expensive. It was really bad for those 22% of people who did start him because obviously it's just dropped cash. And the hard thing is a lot of them have moved him on 10% because he was dropping that extra cash. So at the moment, we're picking him up 32K cheaper. He's got that 7 and a 5 in there. So if he actually gets a couple of starts, so these projections of 32 are based on the fact that, they're taking into account sub-affected and everything like that. He has had a couple of games where he has played decent minutes and hasn't scored greatly. 49, 56, and 41. So it'll be interesting to see how he sort of goes in that. And if he can, maybe score a little bit higher here, he's probably not going to come down to 24K this week. It probably comes down maybe 14K. We're talking about a guy who probably gets around 150-ish. But probably the big thing is if he gets a bit more opportunity and starts showing some good signs, maybe it is a case where then we can look at him. The good thing is, as Michael has said, he is now a forward as well. So that does come into play. So City Draper, 150, especially when people are looking at, we're happy to pay up for maybe bringing Hewitt back in or people talking about Sardis at 190. So it all depends on how sort of Draper plays this week. But yeah, Boxall will be another good pickup for us. Brookska, Brook, or maybe it's my Brook at Kaz. Awesome work, mate. Is Chera a must this week, even though I have TDK, Gorn, Flynn at flex? Do I move Fleet? So this is the thing I've been really discussing. So few content creators got in touch with me because they listened back to the pod from Monday night when I was talking about this in depth. Probably has split the community. Probably a few more, I think, on the no, but they can understand why I'm talking about it because of Chera's price, Cherry's price, and what happens if he goes absolutely berserk against Goldie and the Bombers tomorrow night, which is a big fact. Where I have been considering that the fact that he's going to be so many people's VC, and if he goes next level, it's going to be really painful as a non-owner. The only flip side is if he goes next level, the hope is all of those people don't have Gorn, and it's sort of a much of a muchness. It's the people who have Gorn, Cherry, TDK, or Gorn, Cherry, Flynn, which is probably the scary opponent. So that's why I was sort of offsetting that, but it does make Flynn a bit of a obviously a non-scorer, and he has scored quite well so far, Flynn. The move, and this is where I said earlier, it all depends on West Coast. A lot of people have been messaging me saying, what am I doing this week? And my answer to everyone is all depends on West Coast. If West Coast bring in Bailey Williams or bring in a second ruck that is going to support Flynn, and his ruck time is dramatically going to be reduced because of it, then I'm really open to this move. So I'm literally going to have to make that decision on the fly because teams have come out, 6:25 tomorrow night, and we've got the game at 7:30, which I was just saying to the other half, I'm most likely not going to go, and then I'm going to have to be studying that the teams pretty closely and then make a decision in that 45 minutes of how I want to work that. So if West Coast do name, say, Bailey Williams, or they name, as I said, a second ruck, or Flynn's named on, say, up forward or starting on the bench, or however West Coast decide to do this up against Gorn, if they have a plan like that, then Flynn, I'm more interested in doing the move because of Flynn's scoring isn't going to be that great, and all of a sudden keeping, say, an Ashcroft and a Lindsay on field, they're going to probably outscore Flynn if he's not the sole ruck. Flynn still is the sole ruck, has been scoring pretty good. And, Gorn has been giving up some points. Like, he's obviously scoring well, but he's still giving up points. Like, Nan Curvis was Richmond's number one last week. It's only 106, but at the same time, it's still a decent score. I'm thinking it was a couple of weeks earlier than that. He had a decent score up against him, Gordon, even though he's obviously been flying. It may have been actually, it was the Essendon game. So, somebody like Draper went 110 up against Gorney. There's some rucks who's still scoring well. The difference is Flynn, it's a different kettle. Like, Gorn should absolutely smash him. And then how does that help? Because we know Flynn is not that great in the, maybe necessarily in the ruck contest. Especially up against somebody like Gorn, who could probably just take him for 50 or 60 hitouts that night. And you kind of have a look at what Flynn was doing. So Meek, who had 58 hitouts, Flynn still got 26, but he did get 16 touches around the ball, the 4 tackles, the 4 marks. So he's still getting enough positions around the ball. So you'd expect Flynn could still impact that way. And, Gorn, we know, is going to run down the centre half back and try to take intercept marks. So if Flynn kind of tries to do the same thing, he's going to, he'll rack up enough to score. We always say with Rucks will score anyway, just the way they play their role. Outside of, say, Briggsy at the moment, who's been really disappointing. But so it all comes down to what West Coast wants to do. So if they don't have the 2-ruck strategy and it's only him, and it looks likely he could still put up an 80 something, it kind of makes it a bit harder. And then, I'm playing Chero and Flynn. But, the idea of Cherry and a rookie, if Flynn's sort of, sharing the load, is very tempting. So I'd wait and see what those teams do. And if the teams look friendly for that move, then I would, definitely you've got to consider it as a left field. A couple other left fields, for people who didn't join us the other night, I know a few other content creators have been pushing the idea, maybe TDK down, TDK up. I'm not a big one for trading TDK at the moment because obviously he's performing well. So unless Pitchnet was magically named this week or in any week, then I start considering pulling the trigger. But why TDK is the main ruck and still out of contract and still getting offered ridiculous amount of money to leave, he is he's very firmly still in my side. AG Bags Haste was looking at potentially trading out Bailey Dell either this week or next week, but I'm unsure of whether I should move him for Ash, Nasiah, Sinclair, or Geordie Clark. Any help? So Sinclair, no, because of the break even at the moment. I did say earlier in the year, if you weren't getting him at the point where sort of a few of us joined on, you just have to wait till he drops, which is nearly getting to that point because he's got the break even of 167, kind of maybe have that different role change. So you can definitely sort of hold off on him. If Sinclair does look like he's got that role change and he is playing a little bit more like sort of mid forward in that sort of rank and that role Sheezel was playing early on, Nasiah then starts becoming real interesting. Nasiah's break even's 130, so you don't exactly need to jump on right yet. You can definitely hold and wait a week. But obviously he's been flying, and the probably the big thing was the ceiling. He did show that a little bit on that 133, but he's pretty consistent. So he's probably not going to like sort of move too much in price. But potentially there is a slight uptick because Sinclair isn't back there, depending on how they name their side. But I think he's a fine pick for sure for Nasiah. Who else you got there? Like, I like Jordan Clark as a player. Playing St Kilda is always going to be a bonus. And Ash, we've been saying for Ash for a little while, we've got to seriously consider. Break even's good. The way they're sort of playing, skinnier ground, so it might not help him as much. But geez, he's been in unreal form, and I really wish I picked him up around this spot when he was in the 460s, because 130, 137, 108 to 140. The hard thing is, like, can they keep it up and do those clubs start putting a bit more attention? Because you see this. Players get on runs, but they can't sort of keep this up forever. Look at Zorko start 130s and then it's fallen off. So there's a part of me that thinks maybe Ash, the fall might be coming soon. And you sort of look at those sort of couple of games coming up, Sydney and Geelong, especially Geelong down in Geelong, skinnier grounds. It's going to be harder for him to score. And then it, will open up a little bit more for him after that. But I just can't see Ash, and especially Whitfield, and the way the Giants have been playing, something's got to change, because there's a lot of ball going through their defense at the moment, but they're not winning games. They've obviously lost the last couple, and maybe there needs to be an adjustment coming. So it's a bit of food for thought that because at the moment they're literally spending all their guys, get the halfbacks get the ball, and they move forward from there and do all their attack. And if I put like their scores from last week, so this is like a ridiculous sort of spread of how their points have gone. So you've got in a game which they've lost pretty convincingly in that second half, but Ash, Buckley, Whitfield, and you've got Sam Taylor up there as well. So there's and Connor Stone. It's like ridiculous. Connor Stone had a kind of career game there. But of those 10 players, and then we start going to the mids, but even Iden's sort of up there. But and Himmelberg, actually, how far is Himmelberg? So that's 14. So 1, 2, Stones 3, Taylor's 4, Whitfield 5, Buckley 6, Ash. So of the 7 defenders they rotate through there, of their 14, 7 of their 14 were in their top scorers for the week. So it just shows all their ball was coming through there, and they're doing their attack. Yeah, and if it's not winning games, then they've got to have probably a little bit of a think of how they're sort of playing. So, like, I like Asher as a player, but a couple of these games coming up, it'll be interesting. If he gets through that and he keeps scoring well, maybe it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. But I think probably Nasiah is probably that safer pick. There's also a part is like, maybe it's not trade out Bailey Dell. Like, how much is like going to really lose, because he's kind of nearly bottomed out in the case. And this is the thing, like, players do go through purple patches, and there's obviously good and bad at times. So I think he's down to about 500k now, and he's not really going to be dropping that much more. Like Geordie Clark, who I do like, but like break even's pretty well where he's at, and the way he sort of scores, 107. St Kilda this week, he probably scores really well, but he's been pretty consistent, pretty similar to outside of Brayshaw or how Fremantle have been going. But he's just a guy that just sort of tons up each week, and he probably does it coming up in those games. So if you want someone who's probably reliable, Geordie Clark is fine. But Bailey Dell, who still has the great role, it's just sort of because their midfield's been so dominant. So where are you in there? Actually, he's disappeared. I need to see, maybe if I search by Bulldogs, because he's not coming up. I'm probably just skipping past him at the moment, but here he is. Oh, yeah, he has dropped 473. So really at the moment, even with that break even 116, like how much cheaper is he really going to get? Some of those scores have been pretty putrid, but they're saying even if he goes 77, 89, 72, well, I guess you could still lose 40K, but it's not like the end of the world. But surely he rebounds from that. Like, he's a guy who went through kind of he had his patch. He's had a couple poor weeks. You'd expect him to probably bounce back. Like, you could definitely do it, because the worry is, what if he keeps putting up really poor scores and then all of a sudden you're stuck with a guy who's 400K? So maybe it is the time to jump in this eye. And the fact that it's Ballarat, like, he's got no history at Ballarat, so it's sort of hard to tell. The worry is, and this is a little bit part of it, just looking at a couple of these games that they've coming up, Mars and Darwin. So Mars typically is really windy. So you obviously do get a lot of shots of goal, which will swirl around, and it's not usually a great one for the key tools as well. So if Port Adelaide are missing a lot, that means obviously a lot more kick outs. They'll try to run the ball through the smalls and stuff like that. So potentially here, it's a decent game for him. And then the same again up in Darwin. Always really slippery, really tough to score. So it wouldn't surprise me if he rebounds and actually scores really well against these two teams. But at the same time, I can see what the concerns are. So if you've got the cash, you've got the spare trade, maybe, up to sort of Nasiah. But at the same time, I'd probably back him in to sort of rebound on that, because they want to play the ball through him. He's a really good player. So if you've got other issues, and this is the other problem, because I know a lot of people have been talking about this whole side swapping sort of premium guys, and is it better to try to either free up cash by going down to a rookie, or trying to obviously then if you've got the money to upgrade your rookies and get them off field. If you're sort of side swapping premiums, you're not upgrading your team. So that is a little bit of a worry about it. Yes, okay, you're going to probably get better points if you're going sort of inside, but at the same time, there's no guarantees with that. What happens if a team like Freo come out, and probably not Freo as much, but let's just say there was a lockdown on somebody. Maybe it is let's just say Ash. So you bring him in, he's locked down, and then Bailey Dale now sort of starts getting run freed up because they're sort of focusing on other guys, and all of a sudden you've made a trade. And we've seen this how many times? How often? Last week, people put their hand up and said, I went Bailey Humphrey and I traded him out. Now, he's a bit slightly different because he's not a premium, but traded him out. And I traded him to Rao for a loss of, 70 points, or I traded him to this guy and I lost this. So there is a little bit of concern that you've got to take on board with that as well. There. Ashcroft has the Suns, North, Essendon next 3. So, keeper, which is that's the whole thing. Like, do I really get that much by swapping him to the Chad right now? Probably not. Probably a little bit more from Petrarca, because obviously West Coast is in the 3, and then I think he even starts to come back down to that pack or around the 100. So it's probably a much of a muchness in a way, because just the way the games. And saying that, he's probably the one that scores poorly in those games, but Ashcroft's a very good player, so I'd back him in. Michael Chera does have a nice run during the buy, so could hold throughout the buys and hopefully pump out good scores in best 18, and that is a very good point about Chera as well. So if I cancel that and get up Chera's, because we do know they play North Melbourne and West Coast against, not that far in the future. So it does, Carlton's draw isn't too bad. So Adelaide's obviously going to be tough. The Saints, interesting game at the G, but yes, the comment there, Essendon, West Coast and North Melbourne are the bye games. So that's kind of where you're thinking, well, Chera should go fairly well in that period. So if you can sort of wear him through this and he still can put up the sort of 90s, I think probably Oliver might be a bit more of a concern than what Chera is. So definitely something. What trades am I doing at the moment? Nothing at the moment. It all depends on the West Coast team. And then, so for those people who are getting on late with that, Fagan already said Coleman is playing VFL. Thanks for that, Travis. Yeah, so that makes sense. So, but it's still a word of warning, like he's going to be in at some point too. So we've got to obviously monitor that situation. We were worried about cash cows. It looks like there'll be a few in the next couple of weeks. That is the hope. Oscar McDonald, we've talked about this. It could be even dropped this week because depending on how they name him, Jackson. So we are waiting to see Freo's team, because if he's named with still Jackson in there, that gives us more hope. If he isn't, then that's that's obviously a place we can't go. Huswaite, we at least know, has got 4 weeks, and that's where the West Coast part comes into it for me, because again, Huswaite against Richmond, I'd love to have him there, say loophole Lindsay into say Huswaite or something like that. And then potentially, just playing him for this week, and he sort of becomes that M8, M9 option, because you should get some decent scoring out of him this week. But that's only if Hall or Gross aren't looking like in the team, and their performances the last week show that they probably should be getting an opportunity. Lethal, is flipping TDK to Cherry a wasted trade? Have gone and just think Cherry goes huge for the rest of the year. And I think he does too. I just don't like it being TDK. It does solve your buys. But he probably does. But when TDK is putting up decent scores as well, is the gap that big? It is a tough one. You probably are getting rewarded with points. So you probably could go there. It's not as side sloppy. Like, it's funny because last week before the game, I was like, if TDK goes anything 100 less, I'm flipping him to Cherry, and then he goes 130, and I'm like, oh, I can't flip him now. So it's not, if you've got plenty of trades up your sleeve, it's like I'd definitely prefer Cherry, but at the same time, TDK is performing so well, I kind of want all 3 of them, because he's just going to continue to dominate. And as we've said, some of those games for Carlton, it's not bad. And even like his ruck draw, I think it's not too bad. Like, looking at it coming up, like Riley O'Brien's like, he's obviously aging. That's why they're after Draper now. He's been a pretty decent defensive ruckman, but at the same time, TDK should run rings around him around the field. St Kilda, like Marshall is obviously a good ruck, and Marshall, if he's back in form, but I kind of nearly want to see Marshall for another week to see if he is up and about. Grundy's a very good ruck. And then TDK gets Briggs, if it's even Briggs. That's if they haven't played Madden by then. So that could be absolute dominant. He's going to have either Goldie or whoever Essendon have left. Then he gets, Flynn or Bailey Williams. And then it's back into sort of your Cherry. But then after that, it's Jordan Sweet too. And we just saw what sort of the score that Cherry put up against him. So it's pretty friendly from a Tom De Koning style, as much as, obviously Cherry is as well. So I don't really feel like De Koning's the one you probably should move. Sinclair has a break even, 162. I think it was actually 170 something, but much of a muchness there. So you get 167. So you don't, you're not bringing him in yet, and you've got to just watch. So, and see, make sure that there isn't some sort of weird role change happening. Good evening, Sluice. Hey, Maverick. Is Levi, Chera, and Pry out for Neil, Petrarca, and Huswaite too aggressive? Not sure if Chera and Levi can be held on. Chera and Levi, as I've talked about, should be held, but at the same time, if it's bringing in sort of Neil, like Chera to Neil's a slight upgrade, Levi to Petrarca is an upgrade, and then who's the other one you've gone to? Oh, Pryor. Pryor to Huswaite's, that's even an on-field upgrade. So at least you're upgraded. It's aggressive, and you've got to make some aggressive moves. So the couple of aggressive moves that people have thrown up, and this is what the TDK, and I haven't jumped on this idea, but I know a few people have thrown it to me about TDK down to Marshall, thinking that, well, Marshall can match TDK for scoring, and I'm just saving 125, and they already have money in the bank, and can I put 125 on Chera to turn him into Butters, or 125k to Levi and turn him into a premium? And you start looking and go, well, that could potentially work, just because it sort of is helping you upgrade, and there hasn't been sort of those rookies come through at the same time. Levi, it's a hard one, because if Levi comes out and goes 90-90 and ends up making sort of 50-60k and scores as well anyway. So these sort of difficult, and I did say earlier, this round could be one of those rounds which really makes and breaks teams, because people are starting to get really creative, depending on who they're also bringing in, Warners and your Petrarcas and all your other sort of popular options, if it's Cherry, and if people are fading some of these players. So it's going to make a big difference. The vice captain and captain round this week will be huge. So if Gawn does go massive and you don't own him, it's going to hurt. Cherry the same. But what if Gawn sort of gets subbed off early, or they rest him early and he doesn't go the huge score, and then the people who had Cherry or went there, one is the flip side, and Cherry isn't 100%. He looks 100% now, but let's just say he isn't, or let's just say you've jumped on Brayshaw or Sarong, and maybe Brayshaw for whatever reason doesn't actually get any attention from Ross this week, and then he puts up another 150. And so there's a lot of questions this week, which is really hard to answer because obviously you don't know exactly which way the coaches are going to go, and it's sort of. I hate the 50-50 decisions like this so much because it always seems to, if I roll a dice 100 times, I always seem to pick the wrong one. Somebody tell me, I can't even, I'm the home team this week, so I can't even ask you, should I call heads or tails this week? See if somebody else will get me better. Hey, Global, thanks for jumping on. Hey, Fabs, thanks for coming on as well. Global, Meek was absolutely elite for me last week. Awesome. And I risked not taking Nakos's 125 and put the C, and huge, mate. There's some of these rucks, and this is the thing as well. A lot of these rucks who are, they get into the season after a slow start, and they all start scoring well as well. So maybe Cherry, as much as we think he's going to go big and he's potentially the number one guy, how close can some of these guys go? And is it really worth the trade for an extra 10 points a week? Maybe not. You potentially can find a better way of doing stuff. Was that Jin Bob? Do you think it's too late to jump on Flynn? Yes, 100% it is. 100%. You do not want to jump on him anymore. Apart from the fact that, he's still going to make money, and the break even is obviously minus 45. But the hard part now is he gets Gawn. He did put up a good score against Melbourne a couple of years ago, but I'm not unsure if Gawn played that game. Even if he goes they say 95, which I think is probably the top end this week up against Gawn. And he probably does make that sort of 60K. But then what happens there, like 75, even though it's 95, it's 25K. So you're trading in for what, potentially 80. Maybe it's not the worst move, but at the same time, if it's not 70, if it's not 95, what do you put up against Wits? 87. Let's just say going slightly better, and it becomes 77. All of a sudden, that's 50,000, which means the following week's probably going to be about 8,000 or 9,000. So now you've traded in a guy who's going to make you 60K. Is there a better way that you can spend your money? If it all depends also who your rucks are too. So if you have Gawn, Cherry, maybe it's a slightly different conversation. And is it probably just better for what Flynn's price is, which is 341? Could you find the extra 100K and just get Marshall? Or if you don't have Cherry, can you do something and get Cherry in? Because you'd probably rather go there. So if you can tell me, mate, who your rucks are at the moment, that probably helps me answer your question even a little bit more. Coleman and Philippou were locks pre-season. Are you planning to potentially add them to your team, or is it too late in the season for mid-prices? It normally is, but look, we got Flynn last week and he was a mid-pricer. So it depends on the mid-pricer, depends on the role. And we get 2 weeks to look at them, which is the great thing about this. So Kitty Coleman, if he comes out and goes sort of 80, he's a bit different because he is cheaper. So let's actually get both of these sort of guys up. So Flynn, will just trade you for a second just to have a look at the situation. So let's get Brisbane, but because it is a great question to see sort of how it goes. So we want Brisbane and we want Kitty, the Goat Coleman. He was pretty goat-like in that grand final. There is Kitty Coleman. So 269 starts off break even of 53. Now it's not this week with the points, but he had obviously put a 94 up against the Gold Coast Suns before, and it sort of kind of depends where he goes there. But they've got projections, fair projections too. Like Coleman could reach, like if he was like, now we know he's not playing this week, but 80, 81, 84, just to give you sort of a rough idea. They've got a 70 or 93 and 80 there. Which sort of gets him in that range where we can make 100K. And, it's sort of as a stepping stone. as a guy who could potentially average, an 80-ish as maybe your M6. And this is where it comes in. So 269, and we've got Luke Trainer there, or you might have Reed. So he doesn't play this week. He plays potentially next week and the week after. By then, Trainer and Reed might have maxed their cash out. So you're potentially taking Trainer and Reed, who are going to be in the 300s, making some money to go down to a Kitty Coleman, who, if he's coming off sort of back-to-back 80s or 90s, is an upgrade on those rookies that you've sort of got. And you're going to end up making more money off them. Yes, so then 100% Kitty Coleman is a play. If Kitty Coleman comes in and they sub him out early in that first game, and because they've got so many players in Zorks and Fletcher and Wilmot, and he only puts up sort of 60s and 70s, well, then it's an easy pass. But at least we get to definitely have a look there. Philippou, again, it's a bit harder for him because he's obviously slightly more expensive. And again, very reliant on the role. So we are reliant on him coming in and playing straight in the midfield. Now, you expect once he's fit and ready to go, he will play midfield because they obviously like him. You only have to have a look at the spray that Garcia copped last week, that he's not doing the job. Break even now 62. So he has to obviously do a lot more than what Kitty Coleman has to do. The history there, we do know what happened at the end of last year. And obviously the Saints really like him. Well, not the end, but that sort of middle patch where you got the 112, the 101, the 85, the 80, pretty decent scores. So again, if we come out and we see that from him and we get a couple of weeks and he's got the role and it's looking good, then yeah, fine. Because you can potentially go marriage, Pal Pepper, down to someone like that and make cash. And he's a guy that's going to play through those the middle of the season for us and make some cash. The worry is here, if it's only sort of these like 78, 83, 73, it's making off what's that, up 50K. Like this for him really needs to be 90 minimum, if not more. So we'll get a good look at it. And so I'm probably predicting now that Coleman is more likely just because of the price. But in saying that, it all comes down to role and how they sort of play the two. So, and just because Coleman's got the obvious trades there with Trainer and Reed, but I would probably so at least we're going to have 3 weeks. So what are we, round 8? So that's, we start to get around that bye period before we have to make the decision. But if it works out, then we do it. Joshua Hayes, is Reed, Davidson, and Levi? Well, the thing is, Reed's going up money now, so you probably hold him. But yeah, Reed, Davidson, Levi to track, and either Rankin and Haswaite or Neil and Turns. So I want to get Tunstall or Omac. Well, Omac, we've got to wait to see if he gets played. So Levi isn't a must hold, but you don't need to. But so you're saying Reed and Davidson, Levi to track, and either Rankin to track and. So are you saying track or Rankin and Huswaite or Neil and I'm just trying to work out exactly which ones you're. So you got Murphy, Reed, yeah. So I don't mind the idea you're trading out Reed and Davidson, but if it's getting track, Rankin and Huswaite, fine, or if that's what you're trying to do with Neil. But you'd only want. So the way you need to kind of word that is: are you getting 2 premiums and a rookie? Then that's fine. I've got no problems with it. If it's 1 premium and 2 rookies, it's a completely different story. So yeah, that's what I'm just probably just word it saying I can get 2 of track, Rankin, Neil, and then one of the rookies, Huswaite, Tunstall, Omac, and Huswaite's the one out of those guys that you're more likely going to want. James, thoughts on Chera, Davidson, and Ashcroft to Neil track? So here we go. That's how you word it. It's fine because at least you're kind of getting a rookie off to go up to technically a premium. But you could easily hold Chera. The way you want to do it is Davidson down, Ashcroft up. I think that's what you want. You could just hold Chera. You could go Chera to Neil. That's not a problem in the world. I get why, so that's fine too, James. If you want to pull the trigger on that, I'm not going to stop you because obviously he does have some. He does perform very well at the Suns, but in particular, Davidson and Ashcroft to say track and Huswaite or Neil and Huswaite, I'd 100% agree with that one because you are getting a rookie off field. Hey, Swizz, just joined. Thoughts on Bustlinger early if you haven't talked. No, I haven't actually talked about him at all. No, not early. I'd want to see another week. The fact that, Liam Jones was dropped for him, the kid looked fine, played well, played in a win, definitely holding his spot. But I want to see it for another week before we need to jump on there. I get the thought, but in the wind at Ballarat, yeah, it could get ugly for a key defender. Depending on how that ball, sort of transfers down, and then the week after is Darwin, and it's probably the worst place to play as a key tall. So I'm not as convinced on him as much as I'd love to be. And I get why people are doing it, but yeah, no, not for me. Especially not early. And we just wait 1 week and see if he comes out and scores really well and they get a lot of marks or they get a lot of kick-ins or whatever, and he gets involved in those kick-ins to him and scores an 80 or 70 or whatever, then we might probably get a little bit better of an idea. But no, thanks. Johnny, cheers, Swizz. Need to trade one of Pryor, Reed, and Ashcroft. All got me cash to make more, but if you've got to trade one, Pryor, 100%. Pryor, and in that order, Pryor, Reed, Ashcroft. 100, but then, no, Reed's going to make money this week, so you'd hold him too, but Pryor, 100%, mate. The Greg Raven, hey, mate, love your work. Really bad week for me. Yep, 23-73, which 23-73 sounds good, but yeah, obviously there was massive scores last week. Thanks to the likes of Dale Merritt and Rao this week, Dale and Murphy Reed for Butters and Huswaite. It's all in on Butters. It's a lot of cash to spend, but geez, the guy's good. I just wonder is it too much to go spend for a guy? But I understand what you're trying to do with this midfield. Butters, Dacos, Merritt, Sarong, Rao, Dunkley, Lindsay, and Levi. I just worry, do you get caught up? If you could you save money and say, not get as many points and say it's Dawson or Heaney or one of those. It's not the premium of all premiums, and I love Butters. But is that 150K going to be more important for your team to sort of get next week or the week after Levi up to another guy? So would you rather, because I'm trying to think what next week will hold for you, Greg Raven. So if you went, say, that work, so what are you talking about? It was, and this is hard because Bailey Dale, like I was saying, you could hold, but if you want in the midfield, if you went, say, Bailey Dale to Heaney, does that really improve that much? But or can you just do Murphy Reed and Levi and go get that sort of Heaney thing? It's still getting a rookie off. It's getting you a premium. So I get what you're trying to do, get the premium guy in, but it's a lot I think it's going to have a negative effect on your team if we start trying to get Butters and Bont in. 700K compared to sort of getting a 600K player is a massive difference. And I think, we don't have the cash gen. The lack of cash gen we've sort of had is going to probably hurt us in the long term. So I'm not as huge about getting in Butters now as much as he's absolutely flying. I just hope he has a bad game at some point and we pick him up cheaper at some point there. That's my thought of it. Unless the only flip side to that, Greg Raven, if you're kind of in the top 100 and you're really having a crack at it now. But that's kind of my thinking on it. Matty Dick, hey legend, thanks mate. I'm playing for a league and need a guy around 15 guy. Might get 2, but need to know what you think. Who I should get, and if both are good in track or Dawson or both. Okay, I think both are fine. I've talked about both. I'm looking at both. Track, I'm not as convinced. I think this week, if you're going to get him, you get him this week. At least you're getting the big score out of him. And as I said, watching him live, he should have got 150. But there is some worry there. A couple of those contests, and I think a couple of the footy shows did talk about it. It may have been, I think I watched for the first time ever that friggin' stupid one on Channel 7, the agenda setters, friggin' cane corns. That's my response to that. But they did make a big point about track shirking the contest. And you could see it live. There was twice. The old track would have put his body on the line and taken that mark, and he definitely didn't go for the ball. Because he is obviously worried about getting injured. Against a poor team like my boys, And, we do have a lot of youth there. Track could get away with it. He could get on the end of the balls he needed to. He kicked a couple of important goals, and that's why he got the 129. That game should have easily been a 150. So that was like his top end. And what a game he should have got 150, he only got 129 for. I think, again, he goes pretty well, but then it's what happens after that. And that's what really worries me about Petrarca going forward as an option. I think, he can still go score 100 most weeks, but can he really take it to that next level? The break even's fine. We know he's done in the past. And if Melbourne are winning, like you do get it. But it's like you look at those early scores in the season, the 98, the 80, 92, 96, 94, 70, like, it's all right, but it's not like, it's not selling me as like, okay, this guy's really back number one form. And this is where the worry comes. The big games: Hawthorn, Brisbane, Sydney, Saints at Ellis, if they send Windy to him, the Pies, Port Adelaide, Suns, big, they're going to have big body midfielders contest at him. Even if he goes forward, they're going to have some defenders that are going to go able at him. There's, Jordan, Windy, who, they've got proper taggers here that are going to do numbers on him as well. So I am worried that you're going to get this for 1 week, where you're going to get the big score this week against West Coast, and then you're going to see a lot of these scores. So track worries me a lot more. And that's just my personal opinion. I know there's other content creators that think opposite. One of us is going to get proven right or wrong very soon. That's my feeling watching him live. He definitely, there's the worry there. And I don't blame him at all, because what he went through, it would have been a tough year for him. And I think there's still part of me that he tries to get out of Melbourne at the end of the year. I think there's a big clean out, and Brand Petrarca and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I'm more hotter on the Chad, just because I feel like Sydney will get it together. He's a big part of that. He plays midfield, and now that he's re-signed, usually the guys out of contract perform better. Chad's clearly shown that. It probably suits him better when he is signed and he's settled, and they put him back more in those midfield. So I do like him more. Dawson is a real interesting case. So I've talked at length about Dawson. Anybody who follows the show, you know what I'm about to say here regarding the kicking, and this is why we get these scores 60 and 76. Like, he finds the ball, no problems, and we know there's quite a lot of people that own him because we know what he can do. Like, some of these possession stats is unreal. So the 33 touches there, 31. So he still gets the ball, and the big thing, he kicks the ball a lot. But he's kicking it 20 times, so I'm getting 76, because he does turn over the ball. He's always going to have great tackle numbers. He's not giving away like free kicks in some of these games. Need more scoreboard impact, and this is part of the kicking comes into it. 3 points, 2 points. Like, he has shots on goal which should go through. Like, he's better than a guy that's kicking 0-3. Like, at worst, it should be 1 goal 2, if not popping all 3 in. So this is where it starts affecting his scores, and this is why we've got Jordan Dawson at 498. Games at Adelaide Oval do help, so that is one thing. The draws, there's some good games coming up, but there's obviously still some tougher games. But he'll lead from the front. He is the captain, and if he gets any space, then these games, the 124s potentially can be bigger, and we have seen this in the past. And you want to be on Dawson when he's getting it all right, because geez, he goes on runs. And we saw it last year. It was a poor start from him, and then he gets into this beast mode, and you get the 168, 127, 142, 158, unreal. So he is awesome to own. And then obviously there were some moments where it dropped off, but some of that was because of an injury. He has just lost his ability to kick because he's getting pressured a lot more. And if he's getting pressured more, he does struggle. At the right price, I still like him, and it's getting to that point where it's the right price. The break even of 104, maybe you could potentially wait a week or two, but I think he's the fact that no Crouch in there either. I don't think he's going to put up the full score 2 weeks in a row, which he usually doesn't. So you're probably a chance of getting more, like you're going to be paying more for him. So I've got no problem people sort of making that move there. And this is what I was talking about, the argument between him and Butters. Like Butters is obviously going to out average him, but we know he can go on these runs where he for at least a month or whatever, he could definitely out average say a Butters, but you're spending nearly 200k less to do it. And then that'll help upgrade the rest of your team. And hopefully he goes up in cash. And then if he does start performing poorly, well, maybe it's just a side swap. So I do like Dawson as a pick. So if I'm picking between two, I'm going Dawson there. Dunks likely tags Rao. Potentially, because it's the two in and under guys. At the same time, I always think you go after the captain, and the captain's Anderson. I think it's a bigger point, so I actually think there's a big chance that it could still be Anderson this week. So yeah, that's an interesting one there. Global sitting 620 overall. Congratulations, mate. With cash gen up to 12.4. Is there a world where I don't trade at all? Yes, there is a world for that. And keep these awesome rookies like Reed, Davidson, even like Reed and Davidson, slightly different story. You could go one down, one up. And I think because you at least got Hustwaite there, should score well, and you could go Reed down to Hustwaite and Davidson up if you can, get that involved in your midfield or however you're going to do it. So I think that could work for you just because you're 620 overall. So I think, if you can get that extra premium in, that probably works slightly better for you in that case, mate. Not many people talking about Hardiman as a North fan. Part of that back six. I don't think he's the likely sub candidate out of that. And there was a bit of, I remember talking to somebody a little bit about this preseason. They quite rated Hardiman, but again, out of sight, out of mind, and a little bit of the case that with North Melbourne sometimes. No disrespect to North, because I can actually say, I'm a paid up member now, my $9 membership. But he's at least you'd hope that they're going to continue to give him opportunities. Where are you in here, Hardiman? I'm trying to actually find him here. Let's see if I search by this. Maybe if I go defenders, that should hopefully bring you up. There he is, Riley Hardiman. Didn't go up much, break even of 25, and that's probably another reason, because you're not getting the big cash thing. Probably the good thing is because you had that 16 and the 26, because they were sub-affected games. But we've seen this in the past. Players come in, get the sub-affected game, start playing full games of footy, and once they sort of get those games cycling out, if he can sort of start putting up 60s and stuff like that, he could definitely make cash. And we've seen this a ton of times before. How many players at the start of the year we didn't pick because that's a sub-affected game in round two or whatever, and he obviously got dropped out, and then they come back and they get on a run. So break even of 25. The worst case would be he comes out and gets 80 this week, and then he sort of becomes the point where people won't get him in because you sort of miss that initial price rise and it becomes too expensive. The flip side is, what if he only sort of puts up a poor score, and then you're kind of stuck with this guy? But at least he should have better job security than, say, an Oscar McDonald or even maybe a Buslinger. So that is one point. So, mate, I don't mind that. Like, you will be really out there, and that's the sort of guy that, people be frustrated, go, damn, I wish I got on that guy. Probably not for me with the situation I'm in, but that's good. Hey, so what would you do with Tom Stewart at the moment? If you've got him, I think you hold Kemal. But I'm not touching him at the moment. He looks like Mr. like Potato Head. He's like, his head's going to pop off, his arm's going to pop off. We're going to have to get tape and tape him back up, and then that's going to come undone. What's the 12th man with Bruce Reed? It's hard because the guy's going to probably come out, play this week and score 100, and just frustrating not owning, but also frustrating owning. It's a hard one. I think until he actually misses again, you kind of nearly got to hold. He's just at that price where it's like, well, like, what are you going to do with him otherwise? If it's 436. Break even of 126, but like he's got the ability to get that, but at the same time he's got the ability to absolutely drop. And his last two games have been absolute stinkers. Like, if he puts up poor scores, what are you going to lose? 50k. But then at the same time, he could just come out and go bang. It's not owned by many. Okay, if you've got the cash, then this maybe we'll go hardy with like the Bailey Dale discussion. I'll say, okay, if you've got the cash, go up, go get like Nasiah. But if you don't, yeah, just maybe you're just gonna have to hold and ride it and just be one of those guys that you just hope he turns his form around. Like, he's playing the right minutes, but geez, this is another reason why I didn't want to really touch him, because you know players do get older and they're banged up, and he's one guy that's just banged up all the time now. Yeah, and this is hard because his break even's probably, that's if he scores 60. If he scores well, what's the weather like? That's going to come into a bit of a play around that as well. I think that's Saturday, the Saturday night game, because that'll help at the G. He scores actually quite well at the G. It's not raining Saturday night. He usually averages around 100 there. Let's see if Collingwood, if they're smart, Collingwood will run the ball and not bomb it to him, which they're usually pretty on these sort of things too. So if you've got the cash, maybe get him out. But it's nearly getting to the point where you nearly need to just ride it. And we had this discussion about him the other day and saying, how cheap does Stewart need to get before we actually get him back in? I was like, is 350? Can he get cheaper than that? But I don't think he does. Yeah. The thing is, like, if they need him to win games and play games, then yeah, obviously he'll play. And this is the period here where you could just see him being, you kind of want to own him. The games down Geelong, which he goes nuts. Richmond, he dominates. He dominates St Kilda. Yeah, there's a period there which I think I want him in. So at worst, they're saying he gets to 370. Are you willing to potentially risk 50 or 60K for a guy that you might need to trade in anyway because he gets it back together and he's just that cheap to own? But yeah, I guess if you've got the trades, if you've got the money, maybe just get up to someone reliable. But it's a hard one because he's just one of those guys that you just know. Same with bailed out. You're going to trade them out this week and they're going to get it back together. They've just always been good players, but yes, that's why I don't want to own Stewart at the moment. Stewart's one of those guys I kind of want, if he's cheap enough, to become my like D7 or maybe a flex player. Because you can get the good and you can get the bad. Should I trade Cherry for TDK since he's a R2 keeper? If Pittenet's named, I don't think Pittenet gets named, but if he was named, 100%, I'll do that in a heartbeat. Thanks, Wiz. Current rucks are TDK and Cherry. Thinking Flynn if flex, cash in, but but the problem is if you bring in Flynn, he's just gonna, he could be potentially dropped like next week as well. Can you get up to Marshall, or can you get up further and get up to Gawn? I'd be dropping Levi for him and then fielding Lindsay. And I don't even know if that's worth it. It's sort of similar. I'd rather, like, is there a way you could drop even both, like Levi and someone else? And if you're going to get a ruck, may as well get a ruck that's going to become a keeper. Like Marshall's going to probably go up the same amount of money as Flynn's going to go up anyway. Jay, do you reckon Windhager goes to Brayshaw with that, or should I VC Sheasel or Sarong since I'm captaining Gawn? Yeah, I'm big on this. I think the Sarong VC is probably nearly better than Brayshaw this week, as much as it's hard to move off the guy that's going 150, but you just feel like Ross the boss is going to send Windy down to Brayshaw because he's been so dominant. There is an argument Brayshaw, and I don't know how he votes. He'll poll compared to, say, a Dacos or one of those guys. But Freo in their wins, he's been best on. Could he potentially be leading the Brownlow at this point of the season? Like, it's not out of the question. And he has absolutely killed St Kilda in the past. Like, he's got that 189 against them. So we look at that and go, great. But at the same time, surely St Kilda go, Windy, bang, you're going straight to him. And then what happens and what should happen is Sarong goes off the charts. The fact that St Kilda have a captain in there who's not doing a lot at the moment still can potentially go and play defensive as well. And maybe this is what they're thinking about Sinclair. So I would not be surprised if St Kilda go starting midfield, still again this week, Windy, McRae, and they go Windy straight to Brayshaw, still as a kind of a head-to-head but more defensive-minded on Sarong, and back McRae to versus Young on a one-on-one with Sinclair starting at the half-forward line and sprinting up to become that fourth midfielder. Would not surprise me if that's how St Kilda play it at all. And Ross Ryan, somebody probably gets back to him from the Saints staff. It's like, damn, somebody's onto our moves. But I feel like that's exactly how they're going to play it. And because Geelong, that's how Geelong ended up smashing Freo in that round one game. So they had the two taggers and they went straight to Sarong and Brayshaw. They obviously didn't have Young at the time. And they had the guy coming off, which was Smith, who was playing more wing, half forward, coming up and being that fourth guy, and he just dominated. So it wouldn't that's how I think St Kilda will play this game. So I think Brayshaw, though he's obviously a very good player, how's he going to go in that sort of, if he does get the lockdown? And then Sarong potentially absolutely dominates, and we see why you tag Sarong every week, or Steele turns back the clock and goes really defensive on him and has the 15 tackles, and they both get blanketed. And if that happens, then St Kilda win this game. Oh, so what was the second part? Yeah, and then you're captaining Gorham, which obviously makes sense. Matty, thinking of making a risky but calculated play this week. TDK for Cherry, okay, and Chera to Neil. If it works planned, will open up me to trading to get TDK back plus Bont and Butter Slater. If you've thought this through long term and you know you can play out, great, mate. Great, because obviously that's the team we all want. So at the buys there, that's if everything goes to plan. Now, obviously you need to have a backup plan if the risks. It is, and you're not trying to get sort of Bont and Butters now because you're hoping obviously they drop cash, which is the right way to do. Neil's obviously at that sort of bottomed out price because of what he did in his last game. So where are you there, Lockie Neal? He is break even of 79. So, are you getting Lockie Neal any cheaper? Probably not. 562 for a guy who, obviously can smash it. The back-to-back really good scores. And he has put up some big scores before up against the Suns, and then North, and then Melbourne he struggled a little bit more against. But yeah, so I can understand why you're doing that. It is turning a guy who is Chera, who's your standard 100 guy, into a guy who could be 120, no problems at all. So 100% get that, no problems with that. And the TDK for Cherry, it's a risk, but I get what you're trying to do there. And if that opens everything up, I love it, mate. Forward planning is huge in this. Hey, Jono, good day. Swiss, thoughts on the move of Lawler to track? Yes. Happy birthday. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. I did put up on my private socials, but yeah, the wife got me a toothbrush. So, which sounds way, she'll hate this because she might be listening to the show now. She expects something to be thrown at me, but no, way better than it sounds. So thank you. That's one of those electric ones that does everything. So who knew brushing your teeth could be so fun. So no, I do thank you for that. So yeah, that was great. Went out with some family, so always good. Mickey Hess was thinking prior to track, however, 90k short, only way to get it if I go Kako out fast. Yeah, cool. Yeah, Kako, yeah, I traded him last week. He's pretty well done. He's a slow burn, but yeah, no problems at all with that. I think if that's how you get it done, I'm not as huge on the track as I would be. I think the Chad long term probably out averages him, but it's fine. And that's where somebody brought up Dawson, and so I actually do prefer the kind of the Dawson move more than the track move. But the fact that track is forward and you're probably trying to beef up your forward line, yeah, I can understand it. Sorry, Tristan, I completely forgot there. Tristan, is it worth using a fourth Bruce? Now okay, I'll talk about that in a second, but it's like to bring in Cherry would mean Flynn goes to R3. So this is where I've put it in people's mind. Flynn to R3 depends on how the Eagles name their team, but it is very tempting. And I do get it, and I'm still tempted. So it's one that once those teams are named, I'll make that decision. So for me, pretty well much it's either hold or it's, we go down this path and boosting. Is it worth using your fourth boost? It is fine because remember during finals, during the buys, you get the 3 trades anyway. So most likely, a lot of the time, you're not boosting through there and using 4 trades. It's just overkill. Like, you can potentially do it, but most of the time we don't. And usually in that first week of finals, we aren't bringing people in because you're not bringing in guys who are going to have a buy soon. So, and we have the extra buy round this year. So we've actually got 4 rounds where you're probably potentially using 3 trades and using 12 trades in there. So using like your 4th boost now, not a problem. And by doing this, because this is where some people got stuck with boost last year when they didn't have enough trades left. So I've got no problem with it at all. I think boosts, maybe you keep one till afterwards if you've got enough trades. But the reality is, we're all pretty aggressive at this time. So, yeah, I like the move. I think it's fine. But again, it depends on who it's probably better if you're trading out rookies. If I had Murphy Reed and still Davidson or even having Levi, I would go Murphy Reed down and then leave Levi up and go get Cherry 100%. It's just the fact that I don't have that extra rookie, and I'd have to really play around with some, like my rookies haven't maxed out, and it's just frustrating because of that. And I'm not going to obviously move, say, Pal Pepper or Marriage or one of those guys, even though what his Marriage is like break even. It's at that point where like I could potentially consider it, but I just with the draw coming up for the Eagles, it's like I don't really want to go there. Like break even of 59, so it's getting close. Now I don't think he exactly goes 109, but the big ones, like the D's at home. They can be a bit inaccurate sometimes. We know he gets bulk kick out, so that's the first part to it. Then the Tigers, and then St Kilda. So and you're starting to get to that stage where their buy is round 15, and they've still got North Melbourne to come in there. So I'd back nearly Marriage to get through to his buy, and if he can sort of get another 60, 70K, brilliant. Because then he's just really a side swap for someone. Someone will be around that mark, maybe 30, 40K on top of them, even if it's 50 or 60K onto a real good premium, whatever. So I don't really want to move him now. But at the same time, he's to get Cherry, the guy's just like a cheat code in Supercoach. Matt, fair points on track. I'd really want to go Dawson. Would love to, it all comes down on his kicking and that space. Carlton, at least, Hewitt doesn't look like he's obviously tagging as much now. And if they're going to do it, it's going to be on Rankin. And that is the good thing. But we still need Dawson to get in space. He probably suited more for the Adelaide Oval. That's where it's at with there. And no problems, mate. That's what I try. All your mates are saying say track. And that's the great thing about going and watching. So I've got to watch track live twice. No, I didn't go to the Freo. So I saw him twice this season. No, I went to the Suns game. I've actually seen him 3 times. So I was going to go to the Freo. I've gone, I've already seen Melbourne play 3 times. I don't really need to see them play that much more. So I've gone and seen them 3 times, and nothing has changed my mind to go, I need to jump on this guy from what I've seen live from him. It's like, I want him. It'd be great to like mentally for him to be able to walk out there and go, I'm bulletproof on the old track. We're flying, because he's a great player, and it'll help the D's. And I've got no issues with Melbourne as a football club. My best mate supports them. Good luck to him. But at the same time, that psychological damage, you can tell it's there. And so I'm just sort of worried about having a guy like that coming up against that opposition, that he's there. Agreed 100% on not trading Stewart if those that don't have him. Cats have a long history of resting older players mid-season and have them firing at the back of the season. Yep, and I can see that. They really need to give him a week off, 100%. With Reed with a break-even of 48, Pryor 33. If you were going to trade one out, I'm trading Pryor more than what Reed. Like, at least Reed's got that confidence after that game, so he should continue leaping for those marks and those intercept marks. Pryor just doesn't look like a great footballer. No disrespect out there to your mate Jackson Pryor, but I think he's the one close to potentially sort of getting it dropped and the scoring and saying that watch Pryor outscore Reed this week, but it's I've definitely I've got Pryor out before I've got Zach Reed. As much as I traded out Reed last week, it was like he surely builds on that confidence. The top pick, was he top 10? They're going to keep giving you opportunity, so you can at least ride him, and at least that score it should reset for the following week. So yeah, is Track or Neil a better option? I'm upgrading Levi. Neil, Tic Tac Slice. Neil every day of the week. I've got Horn Francis, Rankin, Baz, Daniel McRae, SPP. So your forward line's fine. Go get Neil, mate. Neil is a legit, obviously, VC captain option as well. Brian Stewart could get rested multiple times, and that's the other problem because finals stuff. Jay, are you going to trade it all? As I said, it all comes down to West Coast. So at the moment, I'm not trading. If Hall, so that this is where it comes for me again. For those people who didn't, apologies for repeating. For those people who have stayed the whole time, so Clay Hall, if he doesn't get named and not named on the emergency, I look at downgrading him, and then I potentially look at Levi, and then it'll be potentially one more. Like I don't really want to trade Trainer, but there's a little bit of thought of that. So Clay Hall down to Huswaite. I might look at one of those defender options. I just want to see what kind of other rookies before I sort of go, but sort of who gets named. But I probably need to do 3 if I'm doing rookie, or it's just the other way. And it's one down, one up, and then Chera's the one that goes, and then Clay Hall, he goes down and get Huswaite, and then Chera goes up, and Chera becomes Cherry. So Flynn, so no, actually I do need to do 3 trades because Boyd, that's the annoying thing. I do know there was the 3rd trade. Yeah, so Boyd, I've got to move Boyd to someone. So it'll be, I don't know even which rookie I'm going to go for that. Originally, I was like maybe Oscar, but I'm not really thrilled with that. So I'll have to find a 3rd rookie. That's the annoying thing because Boyd I'm kind of stuck with in regards to that. But I can't obviously trade Flynn. And maybe it is just say Marley and maybe shove him in the forward line and do a restructure so Stone sort of moves along, or one of these like marriage moves into the midfield. So maybe it's like, and maybe that might be the move. Maybe it might be Marley comes in just because at some point I'm going to need to trade Flynn out, and then I've already done the trade already, and Marley becomes my loophole person going forward when he eventually gets dropped. So maybe that's how I'll do it. Just because I really like the idea of Cherry. And then if I bring Cherry in, Cherry will be my vice captain. I'm getting to you in a minute, Uncle, because thank you. Somebody's finally brought it up. I've like waiting how long till someone actually brings it up. Michael, going Levi and Davidson to Cherry, Flex and Huswaite start of the season. Yep. So I can see it. And that's a good thing too. If you keep then Flynn there, he does cover the round 12 buys, which is obviously going to be a problem. And then you still got the Flex. Crazy Frog, how are you, mate? So sorry I missed the start. Not a problems in the world, mate. I get that. People come and go, and then people listen to it tomorrow. So no problems. I already have Track, and I will bring in Neil for my 3rd break trade. Should I bring Chad or Dawson? I think it's Dawson. You can look at see Chad in another week because there's break even the 79. Like Dawson, I can see Dawson going quite well this week. And also, I guess it depends, Crazy Frog, what you need more. Like, how's your forward line? How's your midfield set up? I'm gathering you've probably got a mid, like maybe Levi's in that spot, or Davidson or whoever. That's the guy you're playing on field anyway, and it doesn't really matter if you're playing them in the forward line or the midfield. But yeah, I don't mind the Dawson pick. I think there's enough games coming up where he's going to hit this run at some point, and it's just trying to predict when he's going to hit this run. But he does this every year. He goes on an absolute heater, sort of for 4 or 6 weeks, and people wait. And I've held off on him, so I didn't go there last year because now I know I've missed the run, and then it goes off. But you jump on that Dawson run and he goes massive 4 to 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden he starts getting attention. And this is now we know Crouch is out. So, and this is another little part of me with this whole trading part to go, is there a way I can potentially get Levi up to Dawson? It's probably a week too early for me. So yeah, I can potentially just wait another week before I sort of upgrade because these guys are going, unless I'm going the deal. I don't really want to go Chera straight to Dawson as just a sideways. But if you are moving these rookies on, like if it is Levi or Davidson or Murphy Reed, that makes a lot more sense to do that. Jackson Pryor. James, only doing one trade, Levi to Warner, as there's no downgrades. Is that fine? 100%? That's fine, mate. 100%. Michael, what's your general thoughts on Daniels and on Daniels short and long term if Sheasel stays at halfback? Well, they got Daniels for a reason. I still think he's fine. Like he's there until we, unless something dramatically sort of goes wrong, but he finds the ball, no problems. He's just his ball use can be pathetic. I think it's more a case that do they leave him out at some point? The scoring's fine. Like, he's a guy at 460. Even if he keeps putting up sort of 90, which he probably should in that defense, it's not like he's going to drop cash. He's just going to sort of hover around there. And he's like, if you're getting 90 from a forward as your guy that potentially maybe your F6, that's fine. And then we just reassess maybe after the buys if need be. But at least he's got that first buy. So, yeah. Good thoughts. What are your thoughts on? Yeah, okay. So here we go. Uncle asked that why has anyone mentioned Stardust? No, they have not. I've been waiting for this for ages. What are your thoughts on Stardust, if not sub, instead of the risk of going early on Huss or Bus as the downgrade option sweep on my third trade? So the risk is so obviously see Stardust and you're like, yep, absolutely. If he's not sub, he's going to have that midfield time, whatever. Caldwell is meant to be playing VFL this week, which makes him an absolute non-selection now. So I'm just waiting to see. I know I saw it somewhere that, Caldwell was meant to be playing VFL, and it just makes it too hard. And then, maybe it's like, obviously, they've still got setters, so does he drop out? But, they're resting Shield as well, so you think that's probably maybe only for 1 week. But, that's a big issue if Caldwell's ready to come in because, he's the obvious guy that's going to sort of, come in and replace and take that midfield time. Here it is. So trio for VFL set to return for Essendon. So Caldwell is going to play through the VFL, and they're also playing Guelphy and Nick Cox. So yeah, just it's a non-pick, unfortunately, because Caldwell comes back straight into that midfield next week. Thomas, I'm trying to hold on to rookies that more are field able this year. Pryor and Kako both benched to Fraser and Buslinger, trying to zig while others zag. Yep, cool. Don't mind a bit of a zig and a zag. Carl, Chera, Murphy, Reed, and Boyd become Petrarca, Cherry, and Huswaite. Yep, no issue. As much as, again, I'm not all on board in the Petrarca move, but I get it. I'm not going to stop anybody from doing it. He's fine. Because if you get him this week, at least that average, like you probably preferred it last week because that 129, he gets the 130 odd this week and goes back to getting sort of 90s. It all works out in the wash, but I'm not over the pumped about the whole Petrarca thing, but that's obviously what I've seen. Matt, if you go Marley as third ruck, not only will be a loop, but also on the round 12, so you can move your chair to R3, so you don't lose the flex when have gone. So it is a point. It definitely is a point there too. I appreciate that, Matt. Lockie with an X. Should I get rid of Reed and Ashcroft to get Rosie and a rookie, or hold and get a Sinclair next week? The thing with Rosie, and this is going to be frustrating because obviously don't have him and need to look at him because he's definitely in line to get dual position. And if he's getting that, it's hard to ignore. So I think, you could definitely go and get Rosie this week. Sinclair, he's going to get cheaper. There's some questions about the role anyway, so you could easily hold. Now, I gather, are you talking about Murphy Reed or are you talking about Zach Reed? So that changes things too. That's the thing. You can easily hold because if it's Zach Reed and Ashcroft, they're going to still make some money for you. So you don't need to jump at that. So you could easily hold Ashcroft. And it does again depend. If it's Murphy Reed or Zach Reed, I think it's a big difference. I think if it's Zach Reed, you hold. If it's Murphy Reed, yeah, I've got no problem making the play with that as well. It also depends what rookie. It's probably going to be Huswaite. So, against Richmond, he should still score well, and you might not even be fielding him. So no problems with going slightly aggressive there. You're going to get a slight uptick, but it's probably not going to be as much as maybe you're probably hoping for the first week. But over the long term, especially if Rosie gets dual position, it's going to work well. I'm glad. Yeah, no, what a shame. But yeah, that is definitely obviously the case. It's probably actually the better situation. Nothing would have been worse than you bring Sardis back this week. He goes reasonably well, makes some money, and then you hear Caldwell just come straight back into the team. And it's just like, oh, I wish I knew. Like, Essendon are actually doing us a favour by playing Caldwell in the VFL, which is obviously great for us because now we can sort of avoid going there because we know what's going to happen with that Essendon team. And if we actually get up the AFL teams here with the lineups, you kind of have a look at how that Essendon team's done compared to how the what might happen eventually as we sort of come through here. So if I get up these AFL teams, so Essendon, obviously Sardis, and then you got Shield, Jordan Ridley playing 100 games. That's taken forever, but well done to him, and Caleb Daniel, obviously the 200. So yeah, Shield's obviously complete rest. So you would expect him. It's not even like he's an emergency where it's more of a drop. He's just having a rest. So, and then you've got Menzie. And you think Wilfie would be the better option for them going forward. So he's probably on borrowed time, potentially probably the sub this week anyway. So Menzie drops out, Wilfie comes back in because that'll be their preferred option. So Caldwell's got to come in then for either Sardis or Setterfield. So he comes in for one of them. And then you've got probably Dylan Shield comes back in as well. So, they might keep Sardis, but all of a sudden then the options for the sub become a little bit thinner because it's not going to be obviously Goldie Carney's there on Ruck, maybe Hobbs, but they do like Hobbs more that half forward line. It's interesting that they've named him in the guts tomorrow, but we know these aren't sort of sit and forgets, but the Bombers are usually pretty good with their lineup. So they're one of the teams that you kind of trust a little bit more when they say stuff. So you're looking sort of through here, and there's no other real obvious unless they sort of move Jones out and go up sort of a more winger, but it's not going to be one of these guys sort of on the wing being a Sardis or a Setterfield. So, and then what happens to sort of here, like if the Bombers keep sort of performing well, and if they, obviously they should win against North as much as North will be backing themselves to put in a really good performance, and there's one that they might steal, but the Bombers sort of continue to sort of win games. These guys aren't probably going to get the opportunity that we want. Archer Day Wicks is one to watch because he's been in the emergency a lot when he gets the, if they do go downhill, 186 sort of that half forward type, and that it's so one that I hope at some point we get there's a cheaper downgrade option. And then from a North point of view, so that's what I was saying earlier, like some have Marley at the 5th spot. It just wouldn't make sense that they're going to put a 197 centimeter key forward with, I should get his photo back up there. Look at that mustache. That's something else. Why would you put that sort of guy as a sub? The only reason you would, because you're either thinking Darling or Cherry are coming in with an injury, and that's the risk. But you wouldn't think that. So I think Dersman's one that they usually use. Maybe it's Will Phillips in that situation. Hardiman's that 7th defender, so they're probably not going to go there with him. Maybe it's even Bailey Stoff. Darcy, speak about Darcy Tucker for a minute. 0 touches is really tough to do in an AFL setting. Unreal. So an interesting one there. Apologies, where do we get up here? Houdini, thanks for the great content. Not a problem. I probably should wind this up because I do have an early start tomorrow, so do appreciate that. Thoughts on Dunkley? I probably should quickly just talk about a couple of those options that are getting cheaper, and then we'll wind it up from there. And I'll talk a little bit, actually, the captain's corner, and then we'll go about that. So as we wind up for the night. So, there are some midfielders and even other positions which are getting, so it is coming out of that upgrade season. And this is why holding isn't the bad thing. So those ins and outs are more relevant because of my team. But if we go into sort of the process, and this is why spending up for sort of Butters and Bont does make it really, really tough because we sort of want cash coming up. So you've got Butters who's going to get to over 700K. You got Bont who's in that sort of field as well. And, well done to those teams that kind of have planned around and do have them. But if we sort of go into this, where's this highest price situation? So you've got even like Hugh McCluggage, who started off on a house on fire. His break even's now 167. So he's going to obviously drop definitely some cash there. Zachy Merritt is one to definitely talk about. Break even of 150, which he could definitely do against North. But the big one's that Jordan potential tag. And if he does a number on him, could we be getting Zach Merritt in that sort of range of 550, if not cheaper? And we kind of want him. Richmond, we know Brisbane give up points to midfield. Geelong can give up points to midfield unless they're obviously going tagging. So, Merritt planning around him as an option at that 550 mark. It's going to be hard to ignore for the lot, and not that many people own Merritt compared to previous seasons, only 11%. So people are going to be jumping on him. Tom Green, we know he's a bit of a midfield bull, 131, has done reasonably well against Sydney in the past. So maybe that's as low as kind of he gets. But if you think maybe they probably go more attention to Callahan or a Whitfield. But if he was to have another poor game, he could get close to that sort of 515, 520 mark. But I probably think he might be as cheap and probably sort of sits around that mark. You got Isaac Heaney, who's around probably where he's priced. But the hope is Bedford goes to him, because that would be really good for our sides, because, an Isaac Heaney who could get down to sort of 520, that would be nice, if not even slightly cheaper. So these are all sort of guys that we're sort of looking at as our, M6, M7, M8, depending on how deep you're in that midfield. A little bit of discussion, and this is where potentially holding Chera is fine at the moment, because he's probably averaging similar to some of these guys. But and Josh Dunkley again is also in that frame. The 129, he could definitely do that. He's done that in the past, and we might see the reset. And they do have that fixture coming up, but we saw how he started the year because of that 173. But the rest of the scores have been not so good, and that's probably because of the extra midfield time. So, is he a decent option? He's all right, but maybe we're just seeing that evenness out for them. But there might be a price where he gets to, and it's starting to get to that way where, Josh Dunkley, in a perfect world, would love him not to get 190. If it's a flat 100 this week, and then he sort of gets down to 520, and then maybe he needs to be considered because, a couple of those games coming up. But we know he can score up against any team. So there's some midfielders there who have enough history for us, who we know can go, 110, 115, 120. And probably the big one because of his 69 last week, which was huge. So I still backing Rowley to turn it around. We hope there's a Dunkley attention would be great for non-owners, because there's quite a few owners out there. And we do know he sort of does quiet out, but I think Rowell does bounce back more this year. But a Rowley, if he can sort of get closer to, they've got him that break even is going to get big before it gets small again. 530, 520, Matt Rowell, it's going to be hard to ignore as well. So Noah Anderson's sort of been in that same boat too. So there's quite a few guys who, and this is where the non-trading comes into it, because they're already at that 550 mark, probably going all right, but we're not seeing the big scores and the big runs from them. And these guys can, they're going to hit between that sort of 520 mark. So it's a little bit of a food for thought there, guys, with your planning, that, can you hold off a week or 2 weeks? And, you end up like imagine able to turn your Levi's and some of these other guys that we've got, or your Marriages or your Pal Peppers or any of them. And in my case, who I'm, Oliver and Chera, like, is it the worst thing that Chera and Oliver, if I was to hold them, becomes M7 and M8 for a little while, and this becomes, say, Rowell and Dunkley or whoever, and then after the buys, the game becomes Oliver and Chera try to get them up to a Butter and a Butters and a Bont, and then you talk then about, say, Dunkley or Rowell as your M8, the side starts to look pretty good. So that's just a little bit of food for thought there. So that, great question. awesome questions tonight, guys. Always really appreciate you all jumping on. Again, Swizz26 for me directly. Hit me up on X. I'll do my best to try to get around to you and answer some questions. Always best if you do ask me a question too. Let me know how much cash you've sort of got. Some people do screenshot me their teams and go, what do you think on this? And then don't tell me how much cash you have, which kind of makes it a little useless. I do appreciate that and the interaction from you guys. The Tigers are playing the Hawks this week, so obviously I'll be at that game. So if you are a Hawk or a Tiger and see me around, come and say hello. But outside of that, enjoy your weekend. Good luck, and we'll talk soon. Catch you later.